Your life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change. Change is terrifying. It comes fast or slow. It comes with no warning, and most of all, there's usually nothing you can actually do to stop it. You can't bargain with it, you can't argue, and honestly, most of the time, you don't even see it's coming until it's already on top of you, waiting for you to acknowledge it. And it's the worst. But it's also the best thing for your life. It's great, it's necessary, it's something that if you want the life you so desperately feel that you deserve, the life that you so desperately have dreamed of, it's what you have to go through. It's the calm before the storm of a better life, even if it rarely ever feels good in the moment. And it was something that dawned on me after watching Spider-Man Brand New Day. I felt like this story really encapsulated this, but not just this story specifically, but the entire past couple of movies that Tom Holland has been in. And it felt like it was talking about how you have to accept these changes through the lens of a Spider-Man story. I felt like this one was the most like in-your-face one, obviously, as well as No Way Home too. Like the most in-your-face ones. Like it feels like he's been slowly getting more and more things happening that are based not just on his decisions, but the decisions of the people around him. It's a gradual build-up as well as a on-the-spot in-your-face change. It's a change that he hasn't been able to prepare for really through any of these movies, but it's one that he's had to respond to. It's one that he's had to make do with, right? And it felt like, especially like looking back on it, like this movie was really like the big one that was really telling you like these changes have finally hit him fully. In our first introduction to this version of Spider-Man, we're introduced to a young Spidey who hasn't experienced the worst of what makes his hero's life so miserable. He hasn't dealt with the crazy amounts of Parker luck that he's gonna get, in later movies and we've seen in other adaptations. He's still wide-eyed, he still doesn't really know what's going on in the world, right? But we see change being forced upon him simply because he has to respond to becoming an adult. He has to respond to the responsibility of being Spider-Man. And it starts off like relatively small. Homecoming was much more like, I want to say like a much more like contained plot. It wasn't a plot that was as big as the other ones have been. It was like a big decisions that he had to make were his personal life versus the right thing. It was ditching Liz, right? It was leaving a house party because he knew what the right thing to do was. It was putting the responsibility of being Spider-Man before everything else. And that's such a core integral part to the character, right? Then Far From Home, he suffers from his decisions that he makes based less on doing the right thing and more on trying to live his life, right? It's a direct contrast to the movie before, which makes sense. He's still just a kid at this point. But looking at it, him not trying to acknowledge the changes that he's going to have to make in his life as Spider-Man, him trying to pass off his responsibility not just as like the next Tony Stark, but more as like the next superhero, those lead directly to all the problems that he faces today. And then in No Way Home as well, more changes hit his life, and these started to become some of the biggest ones. Losing Aunt May, he's already lost Tony, and then now losing his identity as Peter Parker as well, and losing the friends and the loved ones that he's had. He lost basically his whole entire life and has to restart at the age of like 18. And it sucks, right? And that's kind of how I feel change is. It sucks, it hurts, especially in the short term, but there's things that come out of this, right? In Brand New Day, we see a version of Peter that's the best Spider-Man that he's ever been, right? But this has been after ignoring Peter Parker. So now it's a much more in-your-face thing on the changes that he has to deal with now. It's much more in-your-face on him having to deal with the physical changes now. It felt like before these have all been mental changes or changes surrounding his experiences and everything. Now this is a much more physical in-your-face change. It's a type of change that he can't just work through. It's a change that he has to directly confront now. It's just like in No Way Home, it's a change that he has to make the final decisions on, and it's a change that's not going to just affect the people around him, but himself as well. Um, but it's also not for the worse, you know. We see some of these changes that are good, as I was saying before. You know, after a Brand New Day, the biggest in physical in your face change of his spider powers mutating, that was for the greater good. No matter how much he tried to push it down, no matter how much he tried to ignore it, those changes are what's going to make him a better Spider-Man. Embracing those changes allowed him to help relate to Jean Grey. Embracing those changes in his life, all those experiences in his life that he's had to deal with up to this point, you know. Even through losing May, he's become a better person. Even though, you know, trying to save the villains in No Way Home, yes, that was bad in the short term, but in the long term, it's allowed him to become not just a better Spider-Man, but a better Peter Parker. And through those experiences, it allows him to become something sort of like an Aunt May, Uncle Ben figure to Jean Grey here. You know, it felt like at the end of that movie, that's really what he evolved into. It felt like he was using his maturity, the level of experiences he's had as a real seasoned hero up until this point, to help relate to somebody that he felt like he could relate to, in the sense that they've gone through the same things, right? And that's kind of and that's really what I saw here, you know. Him confronting the changes in this movie allowed him to come out this movie a better person. You know, he might have a relationship back with Ned, him and MJ. While they may not be together, there's something there still. You know, he has better relationships with the people around him. He's Peter Parker again, right? And it just felt like one of the biggest themes of this entire like story for Spider-Man for the past 10 years now that we've had Tom Holland. It's been a lot of things. It's been about maturing. It's been a bunch of things about growing up. It's been very big on, you know, him growing as a young man. But a part of that is changes. It's the changes in his life. It's the fact that he has to deal with so many different things if he wants to get a life that he wants so badly, right? You know, when you look at the other movies, if he had made certain decisions on, you know, dealing with the uncomfortability in the short term, you know, for long-term success, he wouldn't be in this situation, you know. And Far From Home, if he had confronted the fact that he does have a responsibility as a hero, maybe he doesn't have to go through all of that, you know, and maybe his life isn't what it is now, right? And obviously you don't blame him for it, because, you know, at the end of the day, also at the time, he was just a kid. He was a kid who went through so many traumatic events, who just wanted to live his life, right? But it's crazy because you can really draw a parallel to his predecessor in Tony Stark, right? You know, I know a lot of people hate the whole Iron Boy Jr. thing. I know people hate the fact that they feel like he's not just Spider-Man. He's like also supposed to be like Tony Stark 2.0 now. But a big thing of what made Tony's story like go so well at the end, maybe, well, technically not at the end because he died, but what made those big changes was that he made the decision to make those big changes in the short term, right? You know, if he kept being a weapons manufacturer, yeah, obviously at the time he wouldn't have to go through, you know, all the stuff he went through in Iron Man 1, right? He'd be able to still keep living his life of luxury as a bachelor, but if he kept doing that, eventually it would have caught up to him, right? But because he chose to make the big decisions, because he chose to make those big changes that were super uncomfortable in the short term, that were not guaranteed to go well, you know, he almost died doing it, but they're changes that were for the better. It eventually led to him becoming the best superhero in the universe. It eventually led to him saving the universe. It eventually led to him having a family of his own. And even though it didn't always seem at the best, it eventually, at the end, it all worked out, you know? Or Captain America as well, you know, a man who always fought to make decisions on the spot that he knew weren't going to be personally great. But at the end of it all, he was able to live a life that he wanted, you know, he was able to live out that peaceful life that he wanted, you know. And I think it's just a big thing in the MCU has been change. It's been embracing change. It's been taking the act of changing on the chin. And I felt like that was like such a big theme, especially for this movie, man. Like those physical changes are so like clearly such a big part of the movie, but they're also telling a story of what's been going on before this. They're telling a story of what's come to expect for Spider-Man now. And that's that's one of the main things I took away from this movie. Thank you guys for listening or watching, as always, however you decide to consume my videos. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back another time. I'll see y'all later.